Hi everybody, Audra coming at you from Studio Blue. We're going to do a foam roller stretch class today. If for some reason I'm like, hey, we're going to roll out this muscle, and you're like, well, that muscle's not sore on me, you can always, always, always choose your own adventure a little bit. I'm using a lacrosse ball and a harder foam roller, but if you like a tennis ball, a softer foam roller, that's great. You don't even really have to use a ball if you don't have access to one. We're going to start standing, rolling out our feet, or you can sit in a chair and do this. So I just don't have a chair with me. So I'm going to be standing. And we're just going to place the ball underneath the foot, start to roll it out a little bit. So we're going to kind of move up the body. And unfortunately, you know, like we could spend like 4 hours doing this, which would be great, but we've only got an hour. So we won't necessarily get every single muscle that we want to today, but come back next week and we will get some different muscles as well. If you don't have a ball, you can just kind of massage your own foot, right? It's just giving the foot a little bit of love. I don't want you to do anything that feels bad ever, right? So foam rolling isn't about punishing your body. It's about encouraging it to relax. It's about encouraging it to heal. We're going to do the other side. So think of this just like self-massage, right? If you go to a massage therapist, you might like a lighter touch. You might like a slightly heavier hand. That's fine. Do what feels good, but it's not about just like breaking down tissue, right? It's about hydrating the tissue. It's about increasing blood flow to the tissue so the tissue can start to break down its own adhesions, right? Give me just a few more, kind of exploring the region, seeing how it feels. Notice if one side feels different than the other. And if you find a spot that makes you go, oh, hang out and breathe for a moment, right? Just let that parasympathetic nervous system start to kick on rather than your sympathetic nervous system. So your sympathetic nervous system is more of your fight or flight, and your parasympathetic is more rest and digest. And there are some ways, some tricks to kind of get the rest and digest system to activate more. We're just going to do a couple more breaths, and then we're going to come on down to the floor. So we're going to do a little bit of double duty today. We're going to use the ball for our TFL and the foam roller for our lat. Okay, so I'm going to try to show you where to place this for your TFL. If you find your hip bone and roll it around your hip and then down a couple inches, that area is where your TFL is. And if you have trouble finding it at first, it's okay. Just don't be on bone. The foam roller is going to come into our armpit. We're going to use this hand to support our head. So use the ball to find that TFL and just try to see how it feels today, right? So you'll kind of know when you find it. If you're like, I can't find it, I can't find it. Oh, there it is. That's finding it. And with the armpit, this should be up high. Once again, relax onto it as much as possible. You can bring the elbow to the ground in that slumber party position, or if you want more intensity, lift it up. Now you can use this hand to stabilize you. And we're just going to gently rock forward and breathe. And gently rock back. Now when you find the spot that makes you go, oh, I want you to inhale, imagining inflating that area like an overly inflated balloon. And then exhale, allow it to kind of get floppy. Right? It's just, once again, encouragement, not force. Couple more. Just kind of seeing how everything feels. Now we're just going to add a little bit of movement. So taking that muscle into its action, right? So with the TFL, I'll show it on this side. It is a hip flexor. It is an abductor, abductor, and it's an internal rotator, right? So it has a lot of jobs, but sometimes it gets overexcited and wants to do everything. So if it feels okay, you're going to bend this knee forward and start to extend that leg out. And then pull the knee up into hip flexion and then slide it out. If that feels good, great. If it doesn't, don't do it. Once again, you don't have to have 1,000,000 pounds of force in order to let the body start to relax, right? I'd rather you breathe and gently move rather than just force that muscle into submission. So we're starting with a little bit of self-myofascial release before we stretch. 2 more here. Allowing yourself to kind of explore the region. If you lost it, find it again. It might be more forward than you think it is. Now, if it feels applicable, keep that leg extended. And now you can internally rotate from the knee, the foot follows suit, and then let it relax into external rotation. And internally rotate, and then externally rotate. You don't have to force a big external rotation. It's more of allowing it to relax into that area. So the reason we're going to do our self-myofascial release before stretching is if you've ever opened a box of Christmas lights and they're kind of tangled up, you need to untangle them before you string them out, right? And so this is what we're doing. We're just kind of untangling a little bit before we stretch them out the length of the house. Give me a couple more here. And last one. And find that spot that makes you go, oh. And then if you'd like, you can tuck your tailbone under, coming into a small imprint, and then widen through your sits bones, coming back into neutral. And just scoop and widen. Once again, you can bring your knee wherever you need to. It's just a way to add a little support, right? And all we're doing with this little tilt and release is making sure that the TFL isn't just trying to do all the work of a pelvic tilt for us, right? Little posterior tilt. It doesn't really need to do the work. And 2. Last one. And relax, and you can bend that knee back. And now let's address our lat a little bit more. So you are welcome to keep it up high in the armpit, or if you want to roll it down just a little bit, that's okay. If you need to ditch the ball, that's also fine. If this starts to feel weird in your neck, I don't want you to do it, okay? So we're just going to bring that arm forward and then start to glide it up overhead. And then let it come forward. And then start to bring it up overhead. Good. So our lat, our latissimus dorsi, originates at the front of our arm and then goes all the way down to our lower back. So if it's tight, it can be implicated in shoulder issues or low back issues, right? Few more here. If you need to, you can always just support your head and just rock back and forth a couple times. 3, and 2, and last 1. And then you can roll forward a little and back a little. If you need to, once again, support your head, please. And you're just aiming your heart down and then forward. And if you find one of those spots that makes you go, oh, hang out and breathe. Just inhale and exhale. 2 more here. And now all we're going to do is take the ball out. We're going to support our head, and we're going to get a little bit of spinal rotation here. So let your knees be nice and still. Reach your top arm forward. Reach it, reach it, reach it like I'm pulling it forward. Keep your head supported, and then start to rotate back. Bring your elbow with you. If you start arching, it's okay. Just temper your range a little bit. No force, just encouragement, right? So we're rotating our ribs forward and then back. So when you get to that spot that kind of you feel stuck, instead of forcing it, just hang out. Inhale. Exhale, relax. Good. And then roll forward. So sometimes you just have to tell your nervous system that you're safe, right? So inhale, exhale. Couple more. So if you have trouble finding that relaxing breath, sometimes if you think of an ocean wave, right, you inhale as the wave hits you, and then exhale as it recedes. It can help you relax just a little bit. We don't want to fight against any of the pressure that we've got. And last 1, we get to do that other side. So I'm going to turn on to my other side. You can do whatever you need to. We're going to start with the ball in the TFL. And keep in mind, it might be a different place on this side that feels exciting, right? It might be the exact same place, it might not be. And then support your head. It's okay to be in that little bit of hip flexion. It kind of creates an environment where the ball can make contact a little bit easier because it's not just in its elongated, tense position. And we're just going to roll forward and back. And just notice if this side feels the same or different. And as we're rolling, if you're like, well, I'm feeling something, but it's not on my lat, I think maybe it's part of my rotator cuff. Is that okay? Yeah. If something is saying it's tight or cranky, I want you to honor that, right? So this is just about exploration, finding that spot that makes you go, oh, yep. And once again, with the TFL, if it's on bone, it's 1, probably not very comfortable, and 2, not actually massaging the muscle. So don't just stick with it if it doesn't feel right, right? Just kind of move it around, see where it feels the best / worst / most helpful. So a couple more here. And find that spot where you can kind of melt into everything as opposed to fighting against it. And you can bring this leg forward and start by extending that leg out. And then come into that nice flexed position. And just notice if there's any like time during this extension and flexion that there's like a grab, right? If that muscle all of a sudden is like, it could just be that that's a part of it that's been so tight that it's kind of weak, right? Give me just a few more here, reaching that foot away from you, folding it in. 3. Don't forget to breathe. Don't forget to relax as much as you can. And last one, extend it out. And if it's applicable internally, and then externally rotate. And just notice how this side feels. I didn't realize that it could be more intense because the other side for me was very intense, but it's a lot. So inhale and exhale. Find that ocean wave, right? And the more you kind of have a slightly longer exhale than inhale, the more your nervous system kind of relaxes, right? And that's what this is about, encouraging our nervous system to relax enough that our muscles can relax, right? So if you think of a 4-count inhale, 2-count hold, 6-count exhale, 2-count hold, and big inhale, that might help you relax even more. If that doesn't work for you, do what does, right? This is kind of choose your own adventure here. We have a couple more breaths, and then we're going to do the tuck. So you can bend the knee if you need to, or you can just do a little scoop and release. Little tuck of your tailbone and release it back. And just notice if that muscle is what's trying to direct the movement, right? So our rectus abdominis, our external obliques, are our main trunk flexors. Do they have other jobs? Yes. But if the hip flexor is trying to initiate this movement, see if you can tell it, hey buddy, this isn't necessarily your job right now. And see if you can direct it a little bit more into your abdominals. And then relax. Last one. And now bend that knee in. We're going to focus on the lat. You, of course, can get rid of the ball if you want. If you don't want, that's okay too. So find that spot that makes you go, oh, yep. And you can bring that arm forward. Think about the armpit folding like a book, right? And then you just bring it overhead. If you need to support your head, that's fine. Think about opening your armpit. If you have any discomfort in your shoulder or your neck, don't go as far, right? Stay in a pain-free range, right? If this is as far as you can go, that's okay. Hold it, breathe, and then come out of it. That's okay. Honor where your body is today. Everybody's body is different, and everybody's body is going to be different every single day. Anytime we deal with a lot of stress, too, even if we're not doing things that feel like they should be creating tension in our body, we're creating tension in our body, right? So that's one reason why breath is so important, especially big, deep, 3-dimensional breaths, right? Maybe a couple more. And by 3-dimensional, bring it here. And we're going to roll forward and back. You, of course, can support your head. I'm going to support my head and get a little bit more stretch. So by three-dimensional, I don't just mean belly breath, right? We don't want to just be up in our chest, right? We don't want to be doing our stress breathing. We want to send our breath all the way down into our pelvis and our lower back and the sides of our ribs, and then our belly, and then let the top rib elevate, because our lungs are so full of oxygen that every single square inch of them is full. 2 more. And if you find a spot, feel free to hold it and relax, just big breath. And then take that ball out, and we're going to do a little like rotation. So you can support your head, feel free, you rotate, and then we rotate. Now, if you're at the edge of your foam roller, kind of like I am, slide it so you're a little bit more supported, because I don't want you to feel like you're going to fall, because that's not actually very relaxing, right? And just roll. You can keep your hand at your chest if that feels better, through your neck or your shoulders. If it encourages you to get a little bit more rotation, of course, you can bring that arm in. We're just allowing our rib cage to spiral. We have 3. Hopefully everything is feeling good. And 2. Last one. And come on back. Go ahead, help yourself to a seated position. Now, we have some options here. I'll show a couple of them. We're gonna quickly get a little hamstring. So if you don't have the best balance in the world, or you have shoulder issues, feel free to sit on the ground, right? Put one of your legs on the foam roller, and then just kind of feel how it feels from side to side, right? You might find a spot, you might not, that's okay. If you'd like a little bit more challenge, you will have to use more shoulder stability, because you lift yourself up off the ground and just kind of roll a little bit to see where everything is, right? Or if you'd like a little bit more intensity of the rolling, but without the shoulder, grab your ball, pop it underneath you. And that's what I'm actually going to do today. So you can use this other foot to lift you up off the ball, or you can cross that leg over to make it a little bit more intense. So we're just gonna see how that biceps femoris feels. So the biceps femoris is the outer hamstring, okay? And just try to find a couple different places, maybe up near the glute is talking to you, maybe down in the center of the leg is talking to you, or maybe a little bit closer to the knee. I don't want you to put it directly underneath the knee for this, especially if you're putting a little bit of pressure on it. We're just kind of seeing. And maybe your biceps femoris is fine and you want to move it inland a little bit, like right in the middle of that hamstring. So your semi-sisters. And of course, you can always squeeze that quadricep up your leg to help create a little bit more stretch through that hamstring. Just a couple more here. And then we can take it down to our calf, right? So you can do this on the foam roller as well. Just allow that calf to be nice and relaxed. So let your foot be floppy. And just then flex your foot and relax. So when you flex your foot, it lengthens the back of your leg, right? So when you bring your toes towards your face, that's what makes this lengthen, just like when we squeeze our quadricep. That's one of the things that helps our hamstring stretch. A couple more. Now, if you're sitting back and kind of relax, you're not going to get as much of a stretch through your hamstring. So sit up as tall as possible. Now you can always, always, always ditch the ball here. Otherwise, we're just going to walk our hands forward a little bit. You can either touch your calf and shin and give it a little extra massage, or you can bring your hands to the ground. It's up to you. And you can continue to point and flex as you also get a little bit of hamstring stretch. We have 3 and 2. Last 1 here, and breathe, breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Again, in through the nose. You can relax that foot if you need to. Out through the mouth. One more. And then we get to do the other side. So let's start with the hamstring. And once again, this might feel vastly different on one side than the other, right? But when you find that spot that goes, oh, yep, that's it, you'll kind of know, right? And once again, it's not about punishment. All we're doing is trying to support our body and encourage it to relax, encourage it to feel better, encourage it to gain a little bit of movement so we don't feel totally stuck. And we're trying to bring ourselves up the body because the way our bodies work is something as simple as our foot being like, or our ankle having sustained an injury can affect your opposite shoulder, right? Everything is connected. So sometimes if you have even like shoulder pain or neck pain, addressing below it can help, right? Same with if you're having knee pain, maybe it's coming from below the knee, maybe it's coming from above the knee. And just kind of explore the regions a little bit. And you might be surprised, right? So a lot of times, if we have pain in between our shoulder blades and we have neck pain, sometimes the pain is actually coming from our pecs, right? Who knew? And of course, upper trapezius, because they like to help out for everything. Couple more here. And then we take it to the calves. So just allow the calf to relax as much as possible. And if you go, oh, that is real intense, bring the heel down to help offload the calf. Otherwise, the more you squeeze the quad, the more the knee straightens, the more like pressure is on the ball, right? And then you can flex and then relax. You don't have to point. What pointing does is it actually gets that gastrocnemius to activate, and it kind of pushes the ball away because it's like tensing. If you decide you want to try it and then relax, see if it helps you get into it when you relax. But that is a slightly different technique called neuromuscular stretching. Give me a couple more here. I'm gonna let that foot come towards your face and then let it relax. We're gonna get that hamstring stretch in a second. So once again, nice flat back. And if you want to do this from a chair position instead of on the floor, like, and by chair position, I mean literally sitting in a chair, that's great. Wonderful. I love it. Otherwise, we're just going to start walking ourselves towards our feet. And you can flex, and you can relax, and you can flex, and you can relax. Just a few more. And if as you're touching your calf, you go, oh, well, that's a spot too, massage it, right? That's okay. If you are like, well, that's not a spot, but it helps distract me from the pain, that's fine. Massage it. Sounds great to me. We have 4 more. And 3. And 2. And last 1. Good. Go ahead, take that ball out of there. We're going to get a little bit of glute. So we have options. If sitting on top of the foam roller doesn't work for you, don't do it, right? So you can 100% do this with the ball underneath you as opposed to the foam roller. First, we're just going to take one knee, cross it over, right? So I've got my right knee, bringing that heel a little bit closer to you, and then the same side arm comes to the floor, and you're just going to roll onto that cheek. And just kind of find a spot. Maybe you don't have one. Cool. Maybe you have several. Spectacular. Either one, just allow yourself to relax and breathe and see how it feels. If you're like, I'd like more stretch, please, go ahead, bring that ankle a little bit closer to you without pulling on your foot, right? We want to protect the ankle joint. So hand above it, bringing it towards your hips, and then feel free to really breathe as you find that spot. So inhale and exhale, relax. And maybe you roll a little bit. Maybe that's intense enough. And you breathe. And we hang out. And we discuss what's going on in our lives. Hey friend, how are you? A few more breaths here. Now this might be where your flexibility is. This might be what feels best for the shape of your hip joint. And it might be what feels best for which glute fibers are tight. But we have the option of coming into more of an external rotation with our foot flex. You can use your hand to just encourage. I don't want you to force it. It's more of an encouragement to just open, and then you can try finding a spot here. And once again, it might be a little different, right? Maybe it's more intense, maybe it's less intense. That is okay. We're just gonna breathe and hang out for another few seconds. And then we get to do the other side. So you guys can just roll to the other side. I'm gonna flip over, get all fancy with it. We're gonna start with that leg being crossed. Now, if there's a lot of space between your legs, you can use your hands to help you here. And just start to roll and see what it feels like. And breathe. Once again, if you find one of those spots that makes you go, oh, hang out and breathe. Okay. Think of the ocean wave. Think about 4. 6 on the way out. Trying not to collapse into your shoulder, but not so much attention to exact posture that you start bringing excessive tension into your neck and shoulders. We're just saying, thank you, glutes, for holding us upright and helping us walk upstairs. And then if it feels good, you can flex that foot. You can encourage that little bit of external rotation, and you can rock back onto it. And we're just getting a little breath, a little hold. And so I kind of like somewhere in between for myself, so I'm just adjusting. You do what feels good for you. And you might notice that when the leg is entirely crossed over, it feels very different than when it is like more in a figure 4-esque position. And now bring yourself so your hips are on top of the ball. Nope, foam roller. And we're gently going to try to descend. If that was not gentle for you, or you don't think you can do that, another way you can do this is just come onto the floor, lift your hips, slide the foam roller underneath you. Now hug one of your knees in towards you. Don't necessarily put pressure on your knee. Interlace your hands behind your thigh, tucking your tailbone, send your other leg away. So you might notice that it wants to come out to the side. It might just be like totally straight. We're just kind of seeing where it is. And if you start untucking and getting towards the floor, you lose the stretch of the front of your hip. So as you breathe, we're starting to direct the breath into the upper fibers of our rectus femoris. We're starting to direct our breath into that TFL again and into our psoas. So big inhale and big exhale. Just allow that foot to maybe be half a pound heavier. And big inhale and big exhale. Try to maintain that imprint of your spine without like force, right? So it's an imprint, but it's a gentle imprint. And we're letting that foot just be heavy. I know this one is not as much fun to watch, but if you have tight hip flexors, it might be the most helpful way to start our stretch, because we're going to stretch our hip flexors after this, and then our glutes a little bit. Now bend the knee if you can, slide that foot in, let your back relax, and then you extend that leg out. Okay, you guys stay there. I'm just gonna move a little bit. Now, if the foot is down but the back is arched, scoop your belly. Let this leg be nice and heavy towards your face. Hopefully you feel the stretch through the front of your thigh. Maybe your knee bends, maybe it doesn't. And we breathe. So a little quick self-diagnostic is if your leg is being pulled out to the side, that might be ding, 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 TFL, right? Because it is an abductor. If the leg is straight and not wanting to bend at all, that might be rectus femoris. Rectus femoris is one of your quadricep muscles that it goes under the knee, and it's the only quadricep muscle that goes over the hip. So it doubles as a hip flexor. Or if you feel it really deep in there, that could absolutely be psoas or iliac. Couple more breaths, letting that foot just be a tiny bit heavier without the spine responding. One more nice relaxing breath. Inhale. Exhale. Bring that foot down. We're going to let the other foot down, slide the foam roller out, come on down. Now before we move, bring your knees together. We're just going to let them gently start to rotate to one side, letting your back relax. Now instead of just pulling from wherever, think about sinking the ribs down to the floor, coming back to the center, and then let the knees start to fall to the other side. So if you immediately go into an arch, see if you can keep those ribs sinking back just a little bit. Just a gentle sway from side to side, allowing the back to relax. Now go ahead, come all the way up to your knees. We're going to do a little hip flexor stretch. If it doesn't feel okay for you to be on your knees, cushion. If that still doesn't feel great, we have options. So we're going to take our origin and insertion points away from each other by tucking your tailbone a little bit so it's a little soup. You're dialing your hip bones back. And notice how if you're doing that from your muscles, your glutes naturally engage. Keep them active. We're going to take our hand that corresponds with the back leg and reach it up overhead. And feel that nice stretch through your back. You might feel a stretch through the front of your thigh. If you need support, please feel free to grab that arm. If you're starting to sink, hollow out through the front of your body. Just a few more gentle breaths. And I don't know about you, but this is the most intense stretch I ever wind up doing. And last one like this. Come back to center. Hands can come onto your thigh. Reconnect. If you need, come out of it, that's okay. Otherwise, reconnect, start to sink forward. So think about this knee being just gliding forward. Pubic bone comes forward more than your hip bones, right? So they're not just kind of dumping water out of your pelvis. We're keeping it nice and still water. And now you can rotate towards that front leg. And then rotate away from it. And just notice if one side feels different than the other, right? Couple more. Last one. Now all we're going to do, I'm going to turn to face you a little bit. All we're going to do, as long as it feels okay for you and your body, is sneak that foot out a little bit and just lean into it some. So now you can also get a little bit of inner thigh. If that doesn't feel okay for you, don't do it, right? And we just breathe and press into this foot to lift out of it a little. And then sink down. Press into the foot to lift out of it. Still trying to maintain that little posterior tilt, or at very least neutral. Notice how if you come out of neutral, it feels real different than if you stay in neutral. And neutral even feels a little different than your posterior tilt. So just notice what your pelvis is doing here and where you're feeling that stretch. And we hold. 2 more nice deep breaths, and then we get to do that other side. I know, it's thrilling. So bring yourself out of it. Bring your foot forward. Find that tuck of your tailbone, right? And then once you find that stretch, it might be the upper portion of your rectus femoris. That is okay. Then we take that arm up and over and just notice if this side feels different than the other side, right? Angle a little bit. You might feel this more in your back. You might feel this like your QL. You might feel this more in your lat. You might feel it all the way down. Feel free to take that opposite hand and reach. Still trying to find the length through the front of the thigh. And we breathe. Couple more breaths here. And then come back to center, come out of it, reconnect, re-scoop, and then you can glide that knee forward if it works for you, rotate towards that leg. And then rotate away. So one reason hip flexors are so important is it's really the main muscle group, right? Our psoas attaches our lower body to our ribs. There's actually a part where our diaphragm comes lower than our hip flexors, right? There's a part of our body where our psoas attaches to the ribs, and then the diaphragm actually comes down to the lumbar vertebra. So if our hip flexors are tight and not firing properly, it can actually change the way your diaphragm is sitting and can start inhibiting your ability to get deep breaths. Last one like this. And then come back, a little open. And then all we're gonna do is sneak that foot away from you a little bit. So pay attention to what your hip bones did. Did they dive forward? Are they just upright? Or are they still a little scooped? We're just gonna sink into this a bit, letting a little bit of stretch happen, possibly through that pectineus as well. And then press. Maybe you feel this in your sartorius. Everybody's body is different. Everybody's gonna feel this differently. We have just a couple more here. And once again, feel free to play with where your pelvis is and how everything feels, right? Couple more breaths. And then we're gonna hold this one and breathe for 3, 2, and 1. Press yourself back. And now we're gonna come back onto our foam roller again. So if you tend to have a tendency to wanna fall off of your foam roller, please feel free to put some weights next to it or something just to help it stay a little bit more stable for you. Head and tail, nice and supported here. Now bring your fingertips towards the sky and let your arm bones be heavy, heavy, heavy on your foam roller. Now think about reaching your fingertips as far away from each other as possible. Open your armpits towards the sky just a little bit, and then let your hands be heavy. So hopefully you're feeling a little stretch through your pecs. And we're just going to reach through your right fingertips. Reach your right fingertips to the right of the room, and then let your nose travel to the opposite direction. And hang out and breathe. Filling up your pec muscle, right? That muscle that attaches your shoulder to your sternum and some ribs. As you inhale three-dimensionally, yes, the pec is the last thing to inflate, but it still inflates like an overly inflated balloon. And as you exhale, the muscle gets floppy. One more. And then other side. So reach your opposite hand away, right? Trying to touch the opposite wall and then look away. You might feel this through your levator scapula. You might feel this through your bicep tendon. You might even feel it into your fingertips. It kind of just gives you a little bit of a clue as to what's tight, right? And then back to center. And again, we're just going to take our nose the opposite direction of our hand. This should feel good. This should feel relaxing. And then the other direction. Just one more each side, a little bit shorter. We just reach, reach, reach. And notice how if each time you do this, it just feels a little bit easier. That's what we're hoping. Or even if it doesn't feel easier, you at least get a little bit more range. Relax your face, relax your jaw. Come back to center. Bring your fingertips towards the sky. Let your arm bones be heavy. Flip your palms so they face your knees. And keeping your ribs just heavy as if you've got a little sandbag on top of them. Bring your fingertips overhead. Now, if you have to lift your ribs in order to get your hands to the floor, don't do it. Just hang out and breathe for a second. Just inhale. And then exhale. Think about those pec muscles relaxing. Think about your armpit muscles scooping. Maybe your hands have gotten a little lower, but it's without force. It's because your nervous system knows you're safe. Now bend your elbows into a little goalpost position. And just think about your fingertips being heavier than your elbows. And then come back, relax. Let your elbows just be a little bit heavier than your fingertips. Not forced, just as if you have a little bit of sand in them. And then back to center. Now fingertips, and back, and then elbows, and then back. Swivel them around, bring them up, and then let your fingertips just find their way. Oh, did you get more range that time? Slide your elbows down, hold your goalpost, think about fingertips, think about elbows, think about fingertips, elbows, fingertips, arms down and around. Let them come all the way back up, opening your armpits towards the sky. Maybe you were able to touch the floor that time. We're just going to Drag them down, sweep them around. 2 more. Last one. Drag them down to your goalpost position. Reach your fingertips away from each other, letting your hands be heavy. And just notice if it feels a little different than it did from the first time you did this. Hopefully the answer is yes. Now just gently help yourself off of your foam roller. We're going to place it behind us. Hands come behind your head, supporting your head, right? So we're not in a crunch, we're just supporting our head. Go ahead and lift your hips off the ground and using your feet, protract your shoulder blades, using your feet, bring yourself closer to your heels and then press away. Don't roll onto your bottom ribs here. It's just the shoulder blades and a little bit below. Find where the foam roller is just below the bottom tips of your shoulder blades and then let your hips come down, still allowing your head to be heavy. And then just sink your ribs down. It's not a chest lift, it's just coming out of that upper back extension. And then lift your ears, let your head be heavy, 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 heavy. Letting your whole spine start to respond. And then come out of it. 2 more like this. And last one, we're just gonna let that head be heavy in the hands, armpits be open, as long as this feels okay. Try not to just let your cervical spine dangle. We want a little bit of support for that neck. And then come back. We're coming on to all fours. So we're just gonna get a little bit of movement through our spine now. You are welcome to have your hands on the mat, or if that doesn't work for you, bring your hands to the floor and just think about curling your tailbone towards your face and allowing the rest of your spine to start to respond. So yes, eventually we'll come into our Halloween cat, but we're not just pressing towards the sky to start. Now widen through your sits bones. Think about the spreading wide, and then you undulate back into a flat back position. So curl and then press, and then widen and flat back. Now head and tail sweep to the right, making a little banana shape, and then to the left, just back and forth. Just a little bit of lateral flexion here. Everything should feel good and easy. And now we're getting a little bit of rotation. So feel free to use your foam roller to help you here. It's going to go to the outside of your body, and you're going to bring that opposite hand onto it. Now bending the elbow, reach, and then come back. So just let your spine move freely and back. 2 more. If this doesn't feel okay to be on your knees, you don't have to be. You could 100% do this on your side again, like we did earlier. And then other direction. And we just rotate, let that elbow bend. If you hit kind of a bony restriction, just inhale. Exhale, relax into it, right? It's not about force. Good. We often talk about muscular activation, which we need, but not at the expense of being able to relax muscles that don't need to overwork. Last one. Come back to center. tuck your toe or tuck your tailbone under, press yourself into a little child's pose or rest position of your choice. Breathe into your low back. Breathe into the sides of your ribs. Feeling them expand and contract. Breathe into your sits bones, breathe into your sacrum, sending your oxygen low. So everything that doesn't need to be active can actually relax. Feel free to take your hands up and over to one side. Let the opposite hand hold on to it. And slide your hips away from your hand. And then up and over, other side. Two nice gentle breaths there. Last one. Roll all the way up. Let your arms dangle. Bring your shoulders to your ears and drop them straight down. Let gravity help. And you're done. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you feel good. Yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you so much. Thank you. Oh my gosh, they're great. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was awesome to see you all. I hope you feel better than you did earlier. Yeah, and then I think next week we might even be using a chair. Oh, I love you, Calista. I love you all, but thank you, Calista. All right, you guys are wonderful. Have a great rest of your weekend. I hope to see you really, really soon. Bye, bye, bye.